Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Moroccan football is on a roll. Not long after being named as host of the 2025 African Cup of Nations, the country is lined up to become only the second African nation to welcome the World Cup as it joins Spain and Portugal as joint hosts of the 2030 tournament. Also, VC investment in innovation in Africa was up by about 46% in 2022. The region's bucking a global trend, with several sub-Saharan economies, including Rwanda, Senegal and South Africa, outperforming relative to their development. We unpick the data with one of the report's authors. And Senegalese farmers shaken from a recent poor harvest have switched from peanuts to watermelon in a bid to absorb some of the economic damage they suffered from underwhelming yields from more traditional crops. But first, Morocco is lined up to welcome its first ever World Cup tournament. Along with Spain and Portugal, it's been named as joint hosts of the 2030 FIFA World Cup. Now, the decision comes just days after the country was also chosen to host the 2025 African Cup of Nations. Carrie Garland has the details.
It's another FIFA first, with the Football World Cup being held across 3 continents and 6 countries in 2030. Morocco, Spain and Portugal will host 101 matches, while Uruguay, Argentina and Paraguay will host 1 game each at the beginning of the tournament to mark 100 years since the first World Cup in Uruguay.
The first of these 3 matches will of course be played at the stadium where it all began, in Montevideo's mythical Estadio Centenario, precisely to celebrate the centenary edition of the FIFA World Cup.
Spain last hosted the tournament in 1982, but this will be the first time Morocco and Portugal have hosted a World Cup. On the streets of Lisbon, residents welcomed the news.
We have an opportunity to show that we are capable of hosting these big events.
I see it as a good thing for the economy too. It will attract a lot of people to the country. Let's see if the funds that will come will be managed well.
FIFA also announced the 2034 edition would be held in either Asia or Oceania. On Wednesday, Saudi Arabia said it would bid to host the tournament, the latest move in a campaign to turn the kingdom into a global sports powerhouse. Australia also says it's interested after successfully co-hosting the Women's World Cup this year with New Zealand.
Kenyan lawmakers have said that parliamentary approval is needed before police are sent into Haiti as part of a Kenyan-led peacekeeping mission to the Caribbean country. The operation was greenlit by the UN Security Council this week to combat gang violence in Haiti, but Kenyan legislators have warned that domestic conditions for a foreign deployment have not yet been met. It's still unclear whether sending police officers in can be defined as deploying a national force. The matter is likely to first be tabled to a joint committee before going before Parliament. Now, as the pace of political, social and environmental change around the world continues to gather pace, innovation in tech and other sectors play an ever-deepening role in both directing these kinds of shifts and making the most of opportunities and solutions to challenges. This year's Global Innovation Index has logged that despite a global fall-off in venture capital investment in innovation, Africa has posted the biggest regional increase on this front last year, up by 46%. So for a closer look at what this means, I'm joined now by Dr. Sasha Wunsch-Vincent, who's one of the editors of the report by the UN World Intellectual Property Organization. Doctor, thanks so much for making the time to speak to us. Now, first of all, what's changing when it comes to innovation in Africa, and how is it bucking the trend?
Thank you, and it's good to be back on Eye on Africa. Thanks for having me. So look, at the UN, we published the Global Innovation Index, which actually shows the innovation performance of countries. In this year, for the second year in a row, we show how African countries are actually moving up, this innovation ranking. This actually means that the conditions for innovation have vastly improved in a number of African countries. You see this in small countries in Africa, but also in larger ones. So South Africa, Rwanda, Madagascar, Senegal, and South Africa have all moved up. And essentially it means, practically speaking, that innovation So individuals that create companies, do new things, are really becoming a driver of change and growth, and that being an African entrepreneur is possible.
And so what do you think is driving the changes that are being reflected in the data that you've been looking at? And are there any specific sectors that have stood out for you?
Yeah, and these factors that you were asking about, all of those factors have changed only over the last 5 to 10 years, and this is really blossoming only today. Let me mention just a few. First, just in the macroeconomic environment, we've seen a lot of more investment in education relative to GDP. We've seen a lot of investment in infrastructure, in schooling, a lot of foreign direct investment coming into Africa. And all of this has created a much better business environment, for entrepreneurs to flourish. But let me actually mention or single out one of the biggest factors that you mentioned in your intro. So venture capital, that is money that is flowing from very prominent investors worldwide to the best ideas. So venture capital used to be zero in Africa, and just over the last 4 or 5 years has literally boomed. And this, as you said, was maintained in 2022, where the rest of the world saw huge declines in venture capital inflows, and Africa was really bucking that trend. So it kind of means that something is going on in Africa that keeps on attracting international investors, and that's good news.
Despite the good news and the numbers, the empirical numbers that have created this outlook that looks pretty positive, at the other end, on the ground, what does this mean in socioeconomic terms for the continent? What's the impact of this growing investment in innovation?
Yeah, I know the terms like innovation, research and development, they sound quite aloof, right? So your question is, what is really happening on the ground? Now, I think very practically speaking, what's happening is that new firms are being created, new products and services, and they are being sold. So these firms hire young people and educated people, pay relatively better wages to precisely these young people, who then go on and buy other things. And this is a positive virtuous circle, innovation circle, right? So the standards of living, in fact, get better. You asked about the sectors. Now, there's a few sectors that stand out: the health sector, the financial payment sector, but also everything that relates to digital technologies. So these are all sectors that young people want to work in, and that promise, a bright future both for these individual countries, but also the individuals and their families. And we've seen a lot of new products and services coming out of Africa in these spaces.
Dr. Sasha, thank you so much for breaking that down to us. Such a pleasure to have you on. Dr. Sasha Vincent there, breaking down some of the insight from the latest UN World Intellectual Property Organization's insight into global innovation trends. Now, Niger is currently observing a 3-day period of mourning after 29 of its soldiers were killed in jihadist attacks near the border with Mali. Extremist violence has risen by an estimated 40% since a military takeover in July, as insurgents take advantage of the instability. Now, regional group ECOWAS, headed by Nigerian President Bola Tinubu, has controversially threatened military intervention against the junta in Niger for its ousting of President Mohamed Bazoum. However, there has been substantial regional pushback against that idea. Well, earlier, speaking to France 24, Nigeria's foreign minister said that sending troops in is still an option, but not the only one.
It is not off the table. It still remains. It's an option that is still under consideration, but it is not the only option, nor is it an option that immediately translates to war, as has been misconstrued.
Now, Senegalese farmers do most of their work during a 3-month period over the rainy season. The rest of their year depends on the quality of that harvest. Peanuts being at the heart of the country's agricultural output, when last year delivered poor yields, rural communities were hit hard. Our reporters from the central region of Kaolack met farmers who are now hedging their bets with watermelon in a bid to avoid a repeat of that disaster. Our team reports.
Alaji, a long-time peanut farmer, hopes that this field of watermelons could be his saving grace. He's among the many farmers here in the central region of Kaolack to have begun cultivating the fruit.
Watermelon is very profitable when there is a good harvest. It is even more profitable than peanuts, even if peanuts are more versatile.
Watermelons play an essential role in providing food security for rural communities in this part of Senegal, where most people work as farmers. Watermelons can provide a lifeline for farmers waiting for the millet and peanut harvest to begin. Omar sells his own melons on the market for between €1 and €1.50.
At the moment, we are still waiting for other harvests, but we still need to make a living. We still need to pay for rice, oil, water, and electricity bills.
Farmers want to grow their melons even bigger, but are limited by the prohibitive cost of fertilizer, which has shot up by at least 60% since the outbreak of the war in Ukraine. The authorities say they are working on a solution.
The Agriculture Ministry is looking at initiatives that will allow farmers to produce more sustainably through subsidizing organic fertilizer and foliar fertilizers that farmers have not benefited from before.
Farmers around Kaolack who depend largely on the rainy season are calling on the authorities to develop better solutions for storing and distributing water to allow for year-long cultivation.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, though. Do so again. Till then, take care.